Hello, baseball lovers, fans of history, of Oakland Coliseum, of learning more about something you might not know about. Welcome to Alta Live. My name is Beth Spotswood, and I am Alta's digital editor. I am so excited to welcome you here today to our conversation about the beleaguered but beloved Oakland Coliseum. The concept here at Alta Live is to take an article or subject from the magazine and expand upon it in a live interview. Today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into an Alta newsletter written by Jesse Nathan. That's really a defense, a love letter of Oakland's storied baseball stadium. Jesse joins Alta Live to celebrate the Coliseum's advantages over its more modern counterparts, lament the team's lack of investment in its players and its planned move to Las Vegas. And we're going to field your opinions and questions about what is likely the end of an East Bay era. A little bit about Jesse. Jesse Nathan was raised in Northern California, Berkeley, I believe, as well as rural Kansas. He teaches at UC Berkeley and was a founding editor of McSweeney's poetry series. His work has appeared in the New York Review of Books, the Paris Review, and the New Republic. His upcoming book, Egg Tooth, will be released next month. Is that right, Jesse?
That's right.
Yes, and in addition to his writing and poetry chops, he is a champion of the Oakland Coliseum. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. But before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, Alta Live is the digital interview series we do here at Alta Journal. Alta is an award-winning quarterly magazine and website focused on California and the West. I realize I have an old issue right here on top, but we're huge. We're beautiful. If you haven't heard of us before, I really do encourage you to check us out at altaonline.com. We offer free weekly series like Alta Live. We host a free California book club the third Thursday of every month. We've got a vibrant website, and we produce this beautiful quarterly magazine. You can subscribe as a member for $50 a month. Join us as a digital member for just $3 a month. Or just check us out at events like this and see if you like us. I hope that you do. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask questions for our guest. We will chat for about 30 minutes and get to as many of your questions and comments. Chime in. I know this is a hot topic and a personal and issue that people are really passionate about. This interview will be recorded and posted to altaonline.com later today. We're also going to send you an email with a link to this video, Jesse's newsletter in a fan's notes, which appeared as one of our free newsletters. Again, subscribe to those, as well as a link to upcoming events, anything else that kind of pops up today we think you might find interesting. It is so great to be here with our community today. I see folks from Oakland, of course, Tracy, California, San Francisco, Cupertino. I am in Novato, California today. Jesse, where are you?
I'm in Berkeley. I live in Oakland, but I'm at the office today, so just across the border.
Thanks for taking the time to join us. I realize that, in going through your incredible body of work, you are not a baseball writer. Can you tell us kind of when you first fell, as it were, for the Coliseum, and why you felt impassioned to write what you did for Alta?
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like I've had a monologue going in my head. I've been writing baseball stories in my head as long as I've been alive. I don't, the Coliseum is sort of synonymous with the beginning of my life. Growing up in Berkeley, I don't remember not going to games. This would have been in the 1980s. So all of my first memories, the fall of the Berlin Wall, big stories of the news, the Loma Prieta earthquake, they're all intermixed with A's games with the Bash brothers and Jose Canseco and Dave Stewart. And so I don't, the Coliseum and my existence are one and the same in a lot is
seems like a lot of fans feel that way too, that it's a touchstone for many people.
Yeah, I mean, they've been in this in the East Bay for over 50 years. So there are lots of us who grew up with the A's as part of the fabric of the community. I've also taught baseball literature classes over the years. So I'm very interested in the kind of literary culture. It's a game that seems to inspire readers and writers, and there's a lot of beautiful baseball writing going back, all the way to Walt Whitman in the 19th century. So maybe more than other sports, I think it inspires a kind of dreamy, artistic element. Maybe that's the fact that there's no timer. There is the recent pitch clock. I think a kind of unfortunate development, but I know a lot of people love it. But
can't open the pitch clock can of worms today.
Right. No, that's for another newsletter. But it is a game that still exists sort of outside of time, like tennis or chess. So I've always been interested in the aesthetic elements of the game, but at a basic level, it's just been part of the rhythm of my existence from the beginning.
All right, well, tell us what's happening at the Coliseum right now. I realize that it looks like much of our audience has some opinions. Sell the team, we got it. Tell us what they're talking about. What is going on with the Coliseum, the attendance at the Coliseum, who's in charge now of the Oakland A's, and what's going on with the baseball team that is kind of the touchstone of this, the home of the stadium.
One thing that's happening at the Coliseum is not very many people are going to games. I still go to games regularly, but I also have a lot of family members who no longer attend, and it's a very it's a boycott. It's a specific act that people are taking in protest of the ownership, led by this guy John Fisher, who inherited his wealth from his family's fortune made by way of the Gap and Old Navy. He's not really much of a businessman, just has a lot of money, and has not really succeeded at running a team. He also owns the San Jose Earthquakes, and you can take a look at what he's done to them. He owns the team, but he refuses to invest, and has historically refused to invest. There haven't been any major free agent signings in his tenure as an owner. So he brings up players that the organization brings up good players like Matt Olson, who's now a star for the Atlanta Braves, or Marcus Semien, who's a star for the Texas Rangers. He brings them up, but he doesn't keep them around when it's time to sign them as free agents. And this is just kind of par for the course for him, the lack of investment in the community. He's really refused to put in the money required to field a competitive team year after year. And so there will be these brief periods where a young group of players show us that they can win and bring the team closer to major success. But then Fisher doesn't want to pay up, and it all falls apart. And fans have gotten tired of seeing that over and over again over the last 10, 15 years. John Fisher became the full owner, took full control of the team, I think in 2016. He was a partial owner before that. But Lou Wolf, who owned the team before Fisher took complete control, was not much better in his refusal to invest. These guys are business people. John Fisher did an interview recently where he said that as a kid going to Giants games, he was not an A's fan. He would go to Giants games, but he was more interested in the red Twizzlers than the baseball. So he's not in the candy. Yeah, he was more interested in the candy, and I think that shows. This is just a kind of business transaction. When I was a kid, the A's were owned by the Haas family, and they invested in the team and in the community. I remember I would go to the Berkeley Public Library and see baseball players would come and talk to kids about reading. A local ballet was put on where the Oakland A's players would perform the Nutcracker at Christmas time. They were around, they were involved in the community in this really interesting and kind of special way. I took it for granted at the time. I was a kid, I had no reference point, but that was a really different kind of ownership. Nowadays, like we've seen in other communities, owners, they're more interested in broadcasting rights and in the kind of money that they can make actually fielding a competitive team isn't a top priority because it doesn't really affect their profits. What affects their profits is the deals they can get, the broadcasting deals. And so they settle for, tanking is what it's called, fielding non-competitive teams. And half of Major League Baseball, and this, is a problem in other sports too, but half of Major League Baseball teams are utterly uncompetitive, and many of them will never be competitive as long as they have those current owners. And that's the state of American sports. And maybe it's always in some ways been that way, that these are cold, calculating business people. But my opinion is that these teams are civic assets, and that the owners ought to think of themselves not as owning the team, but as being stewards of the team. And the Haas family operated that way, and it was a pretty amazing thing to see. The stadium was full of people. The community was involved, and there were competitive teams in the playoffs and the World Series. Now, I do want to say that it's not, people like to say nobody shows up for the A's games in recent years, even when they are winning. And that's just not true. They set attendance records in 2019, so just a few years ago, at a wild card game. 2018 game between the A's and the Giants, there were upward more than 50,000 people there. So that's an enormous attendance. So those people are still around. All of those fans haven't disappeared, but a lot of people just don't have the stomach or the heart, or feels like a violation of their principles to give money to John Fisher and his gang, when John Fisher refuses to do to fulfill his number one job, which ought to be, in my opinion, fielding a competitive baseball team.
Can you tell us? Sorry. Can you tell us? Also, there are simultaneous to the ownership of the team is a problem, the lack of investment in the players, in the community, in creating the A's fandom community, and outreach is a problem. There's also seems to be kind of a problem with the Coliseum as a structure, as a building. Can you tell us about some of the complaints? And you make a very strong case, I think, in defense of the Coliseum as an Oakland treasure. Can you?
It is a treasure.
Those for us?
Yeah, it is a treasure. I think it's one of the greatest places to be on the planet. I'm very happy to see games there. Even now, people talk about complain about it. I'm a little bit skeptical, honestly. I think there are legitimate problems. It sounds like sewage is a problem. It sounds like there have been some rodents, but they're all pretty superficial things. You hire an exterminator, you fix the plumbing. That's basic. I don't see anything about the Coliseum that's actually that problematic. If my fantasy world, we would take the money that has been thrown, the numbers that have been thrown around for building a new stadium, and fix everything up at the Coliseum, tear down Mount Davis, which is the monstrosity in center field that blocks the view of the East Bay Hills, which was put there as a way to placate Mark Davis, the Raiders owner, when he brought the Raiders back in the 90s. It marred this very beautiful view and open feeling that the Coliseum had. I think you put the money into just refurbishing. There was a time when Fenway Park was in disrepair. There was a time when Wrigley Field in Chicago was in disrepair. Communities and teams came together to turn those into iconic ballparks. And that's what the Coliseum could be. It's a distinct architectural style. It's a distinct, a complex build in a particular moment in American history. It's really a gem, I think, of a certain way of approaching architecture. This heroic brutalist style, which actually UC Berkeley, for instance, and many housing projects, public universities are built in this same style, signals a kind of functionality and openness and civic broadness and interest in investing in big things for communities. I think that spirit has waned in American politics in general, and has been sort of systematically dismantled ever since at least the 1980s and the Reagan movement. But it grows out of the New Deal. It grows out of FDR. It grows out of this sense of this time when we were building big things for the benefit of the masses. The Coliseum's architecture is a symbol of that, and I think it would be worth preserving and keeping and reinvesting in and refurbishing. Nothing about it is the problems with it are not deep structural issues. In fact, I think that the structure itself is actually conducive to watching baseball, which can't be said about most stadiums in the country.
As we're talking, I do want to share a couple of images that I grabbed off of social media and from a diehard A's fan friend who is here, I think, in the crowd today. But it's interesting, like one of the things that particularly comes up as we are in baseball season. In fact, is there not a game coming up?
There's a game in Seattle in a few minutes.
An A's game.
Right.
That attendance has just been so low. These folks posted, I mean, you can see the lack of attendance. This, my friend Blair sent me. This is actually a baseball's last dive bar. I think that this was for sale, held up by some beer cans on what I'm guessing is an escalator, a BART escalator or thereabouts.
Yeah. Looks like it.
Baseball's last dive bar. The last dive bar is a kind of a movement. There are several movements going on to kind of appreciate the stadium, save the stadium, encourage John Fisher to sell the team so that it can stay in some way, shape, or form. And we can link, there actually is a lastdivebar.com. I think we can link to that site. This might be a knockoff t-shirt for sale on the outside.
There's a lot of great stuff for sale on the BART ramp.
Yeah, I know. But you can see, the attendance is really, really, really been waning. And then in comparison, I grabbed this I guess is a mock-up of what the proposed, if the A's move to Las Vegas, they would build this kind of very flashy new stadium in the former home of the Tropicana, that would have all of the bells and whistles that a lot of modern stadiums have. Before this, we were talking about taking our kids to a baseball stadium. I recently took my 4-year-old to see a Giants game where there's slides. You can slide down the Coke thing, and there's playgrounds, and you could run the field, and etc. Whereas I think for the Coliseum as it is now, the focus is on the game. That there's not a lot of those bells and whistles, and you in your piece talk about that it's kind of egalitarian, that it's an affordable game. It is for the community. It is easy to get to and cheap to attend. Yeah. And it's something that's really, really important that would presumably change with a move to Las Vegas.
Even a new stadium in the East Bay ticket prices would be much more expensive. That in some ways is just the result of doing something new and having to pay for it. But I do agree. I go to a lot of games. I love going to the games because in part, you can sit anywhere, you can wander around, you can get really good tickets for cheap. Even the beer, which is still overpriced stadium beer, it's decent price-wise compared to other stadiums. And like you said, there aren't so many bells and whistles. I mean, I like to watch the game, so I don't need an amusement park in the stadium. I try to go to games sometimes over at Oracle Park. I try to support the Giants when I can, but I think it's a really miserable watching experience. There's sort of constant distractions. I don't feel like there are really any good seats. The angles are all off. So people love that park. I find it really hard to watch a game there. There are other very nice parks that help you. I think Cleveland has a great park. The park in Philadelphia is really nice. Dodger Stadium is a lot of fun to go to. But Oracle Park was part of the movement toward stadiums that are doubling as amusement parks that are full of all kinds of distractions. And it kind of betrays this lack of confidence among baseball executives, as if baseball itself is not really enough, which I think is sort of a self-defeating and self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, if you give people more distractions, it says that the product on the field is not really relevant or that important. And I think the rot at the core of Major League Baseball all comes back to this fact that that owners are allowed to tank their teams. They're allowed to field shitty teams. And so you can add a pitch clock, you can change the rules to make the bases bigger, you can add a wildlife exhibit, an aquarium in your stadium, and a playground. And all of that is just distraction from the fact that the game itself is not being invested in by these owners. And I think it's just kind of window dressing to sort of to say, look over here, folks, or move along. Don't look too much at the rot that's at the core of this corporate culture around this great game, around this beautiful American game. I've heard baseball called, along with jazz and the Constitution, the great contribution, the three great contributions of American culture to world culture. And I think it's just it's a tragedy that it's controlled at the professional level by this particular group of people.
By a guy who's more excited by the candy.
Right, exactly. It just seems like the wrong job for him. Like, just sell the team, move on, turn it over to somebody who cares. Go pursue some real estate deals, whatever it is that that he's interested in. But maybe invest in Twizzlers or something. But it's there's no need to hang on to this civic asset that so many people love and believe in and
want to stay. Can you tell us about how the fans are reacting? There are a number of, I think there's a nonprofit that 60 something. There's the Last Dive Bar. There are a number of kind of fan activists and organizations out there that are advocating for what exactly they want. The team, they want Fisher to sell the team so that someone who genuinely loves the Oakland A, wants to see them succeed, can win or not move.
No,
what are the options?
We'd like a good billionaire to take over. Like the Haas family. I was at the reverse boycott in June. It was one of the most incredible sports events I've ever been to. Fans came out and filled those seats, and attendance was somewhere around 30,000, and that's not counting all the people who couldn't get in or who were, it was jammed. And all these fans came to say, we're here, we're still here. If you invest, we will be there. And people were wearing shirts that said sell. A lot of this was organized by groups like the Oakland 68s, people like the Last Dive Bar. And it's, the fan base is alive and well. It's people are just choosing not to give their money to John Fisher. And, there was this moment of silence in the fifth inning to commemorate 55 years in Oakland of the A's, and this whole stadium, people went kind of into a hush, and then came roaring back with sell the team. And it was incredible to see that kind of organization. But A's fans, and I've been to ballparks all over the country. I've been around fans in all kinds of sports and other baseball fans, and I know fans everywhere are fanatics, are excited. But there is something that seems, I may be just too biased to see, but there is something that seems really special about A's fans that has to do with East Bay culture, has to do with the fact that that there is a sort of rivalry or a sense of demonstrating, that there's something good in the Bay Area outside of San Francisco. There's this real energy and a capacity to let loose. And I'm just amazed at what fans do, their creativity and what they wear and how they cheer, and the drum corps in right field. you know, it's a unique and special group, and it's I think it's a shame, a travesty. My dad would say a crime, an actual crime, to take a team with this kind of energy and history away from this, you know, really a huge media market. So there are lots of groups who are doing different things. There's a group that's gotten going in Nevada called Schools Over Stadiums, that's trying to put on the ballot a measure to revoke the public funding that the Nevada legislature, in a very craven act, Republicans and Democrats came together to give a handout to John Fisher, a bit of corporate welfare to John Fisher. And so even though lots of Nevadans don't want this, they want their own expansion team. They want to start fresh with their own Las Vegas baseball team. They don't want John Fisher. It was polling at something like 80% opposed to giving this handout. So this group of teachers has gotten together and said, hey, our schools are failing here in Nevada. Why are we giving handouts to the heir of the Gap fortune? So that's an organization that I think would be worth supporting. Schools Over Stadiums. They're trying to put it on the ballot. And in some ways, that may be the best hope we have for stopping this Vegas move.
I just want to start popping in with some questions. Matt asks, what does it mean for another Oakland institution to be leaving town right now?
I mean, it's hard for me to say. It has seemed like, you know, it was a blow for the Warriors to move across the Bay to San Francisco. It feels like that's a totally different culture and fan base, and just a kind of catering to money. The Raiders leaving was another kind of body blow. Although they weren't around for my childhood, they had already left to Los Angeles. So I never got that close to the Raiders because they weren't here. But you know, I think Oakland gets so much bad press. I live in Oakland, and when I travel, people are always they say, "You live in Oakland," and they look at me like I live in some kind of war zone. You know, I don't feel it's any different than a lot of different parts of the Bay Area. And it's a huge city with a lot of different neighborhoods. And so I think it adds to this kind of tiresome narrative that Oakland is somehow particularly run down or unlivable, which just feels like that, a tiresome narrative, a stereotype, and a kind of easy or uncomplicated way of thinking. So for Fisher to capitalize on that narrative and promote it and amplify it, I think it just speaks to who we're dealing with.
Do you think that there's any possibility that the Las Vegas Stadium's not going to be available until 2028 at the earliest? The contract with the Coliseum is up next year. I believe the A's contract with the Coliseum is. So they're in limbo. The team is theoretically in limbo for a while, and they're talking about, could they extend their contract, stay at the Coliseum for a little while longer? In that time, there seems to be a little bit of a window here. Could a miracle happen? Could someone swoop in and save everything?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that you know, Fisher and his crew have proven to be pretty inept about at getting a deal done here in Oakland. So I'm hoping that their ineptitude carries on and that they fumble this. There are lots of signs that that they're going to run into some obstacles. The mock-ups that you showed, a lot of people have critiqued them as being completely ludicrous for that space, or for creating the kind of roof that they want to create, retractable roof, to deal with the heat in Vegas. You know, that as far as engineering, what they're proposing is a little bit of a fantasy. There's a lot of money and power and momentum on their side, especially because I think MLB, at least Rob Manfred, the commissioner, is trying to support this move. There's a lot of to make it happen, but yeah, I think it's possible. There's a long way to go before that opening day. They're saying 2028 in Vegas.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could go wrong, and I'm hoping it does.
You are and some of the possibilities that I've read about are the A's moves, but another team could come into Oakland, either from another city or just a new team. You're a long time, lifelong Oakland A's fan. Do you think that the fans could move their passion, could transition their passion for the Oakland A's to another team and bring that community on board at the Coliseum or wherever, if another baseball team, not the A's, were to come to Oakland?
I don't know. I imagine after enough time passes, maybe so. I can't really say. One thing that the mayor, Mayor Tao, has been talking about recently is having the A's leave their name behind. And that the name A's has become synonymous with Oakland. They've spent more time here than anywhere else. They were in Philadelphia and in Kansas City, but they've spent more of their life as a franchise here in Oakland. And so she's arguing that they should leave their name behind. I hope they leave their colors too, the green and gold.
Well, yeah. What if the A's? I mean,
that would be great if they left their colors and they left their name.
Then what would be moving to Las Vegas exactly?
John Fisher, which is exactly what we want to move out of state.
And whoever the current players are, I guess.
John Fisher and his money, yeah,
okay.
or his lack of investment. He can move that wherever he wants. And so if that were the case, that would be great. Now I will say that I have a hard time imagining that with the acrimony and the difficulty of this, the tensions between MLB and Oakland that have emerged. I have a hard time imagining that MLB is going to give Oakland an expansion team anytime soon. It could happen. I mean, the Kansas City A's left Kansas City, and I think something like the very next year, they got an expansion team, which became the Kansas City Royals. There are talks about bringing a team back to Montreal. Montreal lost the Expos some years ago. They became the Washington Nationals. So it could happen, but I kind of feel like the bridge is burning right now between MLB and the city of Oakland. So I don't have a lot of faith that if the A's left, Oakland would be high on the list. Now, that makes no sense financially because this is a huge market. I think it's maybe the 6th largest media market. Vegas is down there like 20th or something. There's, it's financially, this is much more lucrative. The Bay Area is a much more lucrative place to be. So I don't really understand the economics of it, but I think the relationship is such that I can imagine it being hard to get an expansion team. But from my perspective, if the A's left their name and an expansion team came, that would be great. It would seem like almost like they never left. All that we got rid of was the problem. But if there's an expansion team with another name, that would take me a while.
Sure. Well, it seems like I know how people feel, especially Americans can feel about baseball. I mentioned we took my son with my mom to his first game, and she was in tears. Being at his first baseball game with him was a milestone moment. And so your newsletter for Alta, your piece for Alta, was just kind of a testament to not only the emotion it seems like A's fans and Oakland has for its baseball team, and the stadium that gets a really bad rap, but is the home to so many wonderful memories and what could be a really special baseball team. I hope the miracle happens.
I do too. I mean, you can stretch out there. There's elbow room. The ticket prices are cheap. There are a lot of good seats. I'm honestly not sure what's not to like about the Coliseum. It's and I take friends there when they come to town. If they allow it, I'll take them to the Coliseum, and nobody ever has a bad time, or at least they don't tell me about it.
Jesse, thank you so much for, I realize this is a gigantic topic and we'll get into the pitching timer on another day. But I am so grateful that you took the time today to kind of come and expand upon this. Folks, and thank you all. This interview has been recorded and will be posted to altaonline.com later today. We're going to send you a link to that, a link to Jesse's article, anything else that popped up. We're also going to invite you next week. We're going to take another 180 here. And talk about the housing crisis facing California's farm workers. So our current issue has a big Gimme Shelter section all about housing in the West. Next week, we're going to speak specifically about how that affects farm workers. But until then, again, Jesse Nathan.
Thank you.
Berkeley,
Thank you so
Oakland
much.
resident. Thank you so much. A's fans, thank you for joining us. And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye. Sell the team.